Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren apologized Monday for her previous claims of Native American ancestry. Dating back to her first run for the Senate in 2012, Warren's opponents have accused her of lying about having American Indian heritage. Before she officially started her presidential campaign, Warren released the results of a DNA test. That test reportedly showed strong evidence of a Native American ancestor 6 to 10 generations ago. But the Cherokee Nation and other indigenous groups criticized Warren for the move. They said tribal citizenship could not be proven by a DNA test. Warren's apology came at the Frank Lemire Native American Presidential Forum in Iowa. It's being billed as the first presidential campaign event devoted entirely to issues affecting tribal nations and indigenous peoples. Warren was greeted by applause as she took the stage.
Like anyone who's being honest with themselves, I know that I have made mistakes. I am sorry for harm I have caused. I have listened and I have learned a lot, and I am grateful for the many conversations that we've had together. It is a great honor to be able to partner with Indian country, and that's what I've tried to do as a senator, and that's what I promise I will do as President of the United States of America.
CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me now from Sioux City, Iowa. Ed, thank you so much for joining us. So you were there. Tell us how Senator Warren was received today.
Quite warmly, Elaine. This is a first-of-its-kind forum, never held before by Native American leaders, and frankly, kind of a smart idea on their part, because in this part of Iowa, northwestern Iowa, South Dakota, Nebraska, you kind of come to an intersection of several different Native communities and Indian reservations in this greater part of the Midwest. And so they decided to pool their resources and draw 8 of the 23 Democratic candidates today and tomorrow here. And Warren, obviously the biggest name and the one that was set to face the most scrutiny because of what she had claimed in years past and the DNA test she released last year. Important to point out that of the roughly 5.2 million Native Americans across the country, among those that vote, they vote overwhelmingly for Democrats. So perhaps it's no surprise that regardless of that issue last year, she was warmly received here today by the few hundred in the crowd. And they defended her. They essentially said, look, the president may continue to attack you or Native people in general, but you just keep doing what you're doing, keep unveiling those plans of yours, and we'll have your back if you're the nominee.
Ed, the statement that she made today, have we heard that kind of statement from her before?
That's an important distinction, Elaine, important thing to point out. She had apologized privately to some tribal leaders. I believe you said it was the Cherokees who had raised some concerns last year. And in conversations with various Native American leaders and activists across the country over the past several months, she has at times apologized and clarified what she was doing. What she did today, by saying it publicly and in front of a few dozen or hundreds of Native American activists from across the country, was new, different, and notable because she did it. And look, her campaign is reluctant to have her talk about this anymore. They, I think today, thought that perhaps she would do this, she would say it, and that she'd be able to put it behind her. Because when you talk to voters here in Iowa and across the country, when you talk to observers of the campaign, they say, I like Warren, she's working hard at it, she's earned her spot now in the top tier, but, and the but is either, I worry that she's going to face relentless attacks on the president along the lines of what he calls her, Pocahontas, or it's, but I worry about Medicare for all and whether that's just too liberal for the country. It's telling that the one sort of personal issue in her background, this claim of Native American heritage, is one that perhaps they believe they might be able to explain away by having her do what she did today. And if not, they'll probably try to find some other way for her to do it later this fall if it continues to be an issue of concern.
So I want to ask you a little bit about the electorate. So Native Americans and Alaskans comprise 2% of the U.S. population, but in states such as Alaska or New Mexico, more than 10% of the voting age population is Native American. Is that enough to swing a primary or some electoral college votes?
Not necessarily in Alaska, which is predominantly Republican, or New Mexico, that is predominantly Democrat at this point, but activists have said, and we're saying ahead of this forum, if either party were to organize Native communities enough in Arizona or Michigan or North Carolina or Wisconsin, you might be able to help increase the Democratic percentage ever so slightly in those states where the results in 2016 were quite close. So remember Wisconsin, remember North Carolina, remember Michigan, where Trump only won by a few thousand votes, 30,000 votes or so, 11,000 votes. What if, they argue, you had been able to turn out more young, especially Native Americans, because they are predominantly younger, and inspire them to go to the polls? It might have tipped the scales to the Democrats. Similarly, in Arizona, a state the Democrats would like to win next year, where there is a larger percentage of Native American voters, they believe perhaps it could help them tip the scales. We'll see.
Well, this forum is the first of its kind. What specifically are candidates proposing in order to connect with and win over those voters?
You talk to people here, Elaine, and they say, you know, it's issues of getting the government out of our decision-making process. It's what can you do to make sure, though, that there's more federal funding for health care concerns, for education on Indian reservations, for dealing with the opioid and alcohol addiction crisis on reservations. Opioid, of course, more nationally, more broadly, but alcoholism certainly is a big concern. Elizabeth Warren, Julian Castro, a few of the other candidates have released plans in this regard. They're sharing those details over the course of today and tomorrow. And, you know, and a lot of this jives with what they would tell any other organization or any other group of people, especially when it comes to health care and education. Concerns about, for example, expanding broadband access to more rural sections of the country, because obviously most reservations are in rural areas, and that's a big issue of concern across Iowa, among all Iowans. So in many ways, a lot of these issues overlap, but in others, there are more specific concerns, and that's what this forum is designed to flush out.
Really interesting to hear about those issues. Ed O'Keefe in Sioux City for us. Ed, thank you.